Okay, so let's start the actual audit of certain heads. Certain heads which are critical to the financial statements, certain heads which are very important heads which will determine the quality of audit, the key importance areas which are there in any audit and every audit. Those we are going to study over here. So it is practically impossible to study all the audit programs of all the account heads which are there in the cost statements, because they are numerous. There are many heads which are there. So in your syllabus, in your textbook, certain key heads have been cherry picked, and those heads have been considered for detailed discussion from perspective of cost audit program. So let's study the cost audit program of certain important heads of your cost statement. And the first and one of the most important heads which is there in your cost statements is finished goods. So we are going to study the audit program of products which are the finished goods. They are not the raw material, they are not the work in progress, but the finished goods which are there in your warehouse, which will determine your sales during the year, which will determine your profits during the year. So yes, profit figure is also directly impacted by finished goods figure. So profit are increased by the higher amount of finished goods which are there, because finished goods are clubbed under the credit side of your profit and loss account. So yes, finished goods have a direct impact on your profits. So profits will inflate if finished goods are high, and profit will deflate if finished goods are low. Similarly, finished goods also appear in the asset side of the balance sheet. So asset side will again inflate if finished goods are there, and asset sides will deflate if finished goods are not there. So finished goods, how should we carry on the audit of finished goods? What are the steps? What are the key ingredients of getting finished goods audited? That we are going to study over here. Please remember one very important stuff. The steps which we are going to discuss over here, the audit program which we are going to make over here, it is an audit program on a generic basis, which means if you belong to a particular specific industry, like mining industry, if you are auditing mining industry, then your steps of doing audit of finished goods of mining industry might have additional steps other than the steps which are listed over here. So this is not a customized list. This is a very generic list. These steps will be there in auditing finished products of all the companies. But if you are belonging to a company where there is a specific kind of finished goods which require additional steps, you have to employ additional steps also. This is just an illustrative list. This is not an exhaustive list. So many more steps can be undertaken to audit the finished goods. These are just a few of them. The basics which will be there in every case, these are those steps. All right. So let's start. Audit of products, audit of finished goods. Step number one is inventory balancing. So the first and foremost step in auditing the finished goods number is inventory balancing. A very simple equation, guys. We have been studying this equation since our intermediate level, and this equation says that opening balance of finished goods plus produced during the year should be equal to sales plus internal transfers plus the closing stock. A very simple equation, okay? What happens is, whatever is the opening stock of finished goods, whatever production you've made, you add it in that, should be equal to your sales during the year, whatever sales you have achieved during the year, plus internal transfers, if there's any internal transfer, which means inter-department transfer, which is there. Internally you have transferred your finished goods to, say, quality control department, okay? Or internally you have transferred your goods to, say, for some checking or for some any kind of scrutiny, you have transferred the goods somewhere. Then those internal transfer and closing stock which is there at the year end should be equal. These two sides should always be equal. This is a very basic calculation, a very basic mathematical check which will tell you whether your inventory number which is coming in the balance sheet is correct or not. So this is a very basic calculation which we do in any inventory checking procedure. Now, at the year end, we take one more step. What is that step? At the year end, we take a step known as inventory physical verification. This is a step which is a mandatory step which is undertaken at the year end for the finished goods. Now, suppose during the year, the figure of closing stock as per this equation is X. However, the inventory which is physically verified is X minus 5. I repeat, suppose the closing stock, number of goods, I'm not talking about the value in rupees, I'm talking about number of units, okay? Suppose closing stock of a particular finished goods is 10 as per the books of accounts. But as per physical verification, this number is 5. Then guys, there is an ample proof that there is some leakage in inventory. Why? Because if using this equation, the finished good is coming as 10, then physically also the finished good should have been 10. How come is it that the finished good which is physically there is 5? It clearly means that there is some leakage, which means there is some theft which has happened in case of closing stock. Someone has stolen the closing stock from our warehouse. Some stock is non-traceable. This is a big hint to know that inventory is troublesome. Inventory is not correct in this particular organization. So using this equation, we cross tally these numbers with the physical inventory verification numbers, and then we match both of them to ascertain whether the inventory which is physically present at the warehouse at the year end of finished goods is actually equal to the equation inventory which we reach using this particular equation. So this balancing, this inventory balancing serves more than one purpose. This is a very, very important step. And at least when I used to audit with KPMG at that point in time, this was the first step which we used to undertake while we were auditing purchases. It includes 2-3 things, guys. Purchases also, production also is included over here. Internal transfers is also included over here. Closing stock is also included over here. Sales is also included over here. So this particular balancing would actually entail checking off these 4 items. Opening balance is of course a carry forward figure from previous year to current year. There is no checking in this particular figure. Opening stock is not subject to checking at all because this is the closing figure of the earlier year. Closing balance of earlier year. This is the opening stock. Opening stock is closing balance of the earlier year. So closing balance of the earlier year is the opening balance. So opening balance need not be checked at all. So the things which we should check is production, sales, internal transfer, closing stock to be tallied with the inventory physical verification. That is how we are going to check that this equation which the management is telling us is actually correct. And this equation will be will be computed in 2 manner. Number 1, units in terms of units, which means quantity. So this equation will have quantitative figures. Then this equation will have figures in terms of rupees, okay, value. So both the balancing, inventory balancing will be done first in terms of quantity, second in terms of value. Now this is a balancing table which I have prepared. It is nothing but that the same information represented in a tabular format. Guys, there is no hard and fast rule. There is no hard and fast tabular format which is given for any of these verifications or checking. But yes, these are the recommended formats which you may use. If you have some better format, you can use that. It's absolutely your will. There is no hard and fast specific tables which are prescribed under law which you necessarily have to use. No, nothing like that. So you can use this balancing table. If you have some other format, you can use that as well. So this format may be something else as well, according to your will, according to your need. The format is very simple, guys. So I've listed all my products in first column, A, B, C, D, E, F. Suppose I have these 6 products which are there. Then I've written the products in terms of units, okay. I'm very keen to know the balancing in terms of units because I want to tally it with the inventory verification result which I have. So I'm eager to know this balancing table in terms of units. So X is in meters, Y is in numbers, Z is in liters, this is in kgs, this is again meters, this is again units. That is how my finished goods are measured. So what I'll do is I'll just plot my numbers in the columns which are given over here. So whatever is my opening balance, whatever is my production, whatever is my sales, internal transfers, and then the residuary is the closing balance. This is how I'm going to plot my units over here, and this equation should always match, which means opening balance plus production minus sales minus internal transfer should give my closing balance as the residuary figure, and this closing balance should tally to my inventory physical verification, which I as an auditor will do after I go in the warehouse and see how many finished goods are lying over there. So this equation should always tally. This equation should always result into a closing balance which is equivalent to inventory physical verification closing balance, and if it doesn't tie, then I get a hint that there is something which is wrong in this calculation. So this calculation is the key to inventory verification, and I need to get this calculation absolutely correct. Guys, similar calculation is done for raw material also and packing material also. RM means raw material, packing material means PM. So similar table is to be made for raw material as well as packing material, because those two things are also inventory, and those inventories are also to be tallied in the same manner. So yes, if this table is matched, if this table is tallied to my physical verification, then at least I'm sure that prima facie my inventory recording is absolutely complete. So this give me an assurance on completeness of the finished goods details which are given in my financial statement. So that is how the first step which I'll take is inventory balancing, and this is an example or table of inventory balancing. All right. The second step which I need to see, which I've already discussed with you, is closing stock of previous year becomes the opening stock of the current year. So no rocket science in it, nothing to verify or nothing to scrutinize in it, because the opening stock of the previous year forms the closing stock of the current year. Closing stock of the previous year forms the opening stock of the current year as it is. So this opening stock figure will come from the closing stock of the previous year. So closing stock of the previous year will become the opening stock of the current year. So that will become as it is. So it is very, very easy. So this is a easy step which you can perform within few minutes. Next, capacity utilization of past 5 years must be analyzed. Now this is very, very important, guys. Finished goods are a direct outcome of capacity which you have in your plant. We have already studied CAS 2, Cost Accounting Standard 2, which deals with capacity. So according to that standard also, we have learned to compute many kinds of capacity, guys. So finished goods is an output of capacity. And if finished goods production is reduced in a particular year, then it directly indicates that we are not utilizing our capacity to the fullest. And while doing CAS 2, I have already discussed the importance of utilizing our capacity to the fullest. We have already discussed that at length, in detail we have discussed in CAS 2. So now capacity utilization, which is the genesis of finished goods, that should be analyzed for past 5 years very, very carefully. I need to know if I'm not producing the finished goods to the best of my ability, my plant's ability, my machinery's ability, then why am I not able to produce it? I should be able to produce it to the best of my ability, to the best of my plant's ability. Why am I not able to produce it? That I need to know. And who will tell me? Capacity utilization will tell me. So capacity utilization for past 5 years must be analyzed. Again, guys, a very simple chart which I've made. This is not statutory requirement. This is not a hard and fast rule that you will prepare your chart in the similar manner. If you have a better format, you can make it in that manner. This is just an indicative chart, indicative way in which you can represent your capacity utilization for past 5 years. Just indicative for your knowledge only, for your reference only. If you want to change it according to your industry, of course your industry might be a little different. If according to your industry you want to change it, please go ahead, change the format as per your requirements. This is just an indicative format. So I have listed my products in the first column. I have 5 products for which I need to check the capacity. So capacity utilization for past few years, 15, 16, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20, 21. All these years I have put in over here. The numbers are put in over here, and now I'll easily be able to analyze this difference. What is the difference? I can easily see what kind of change has occurred in this particular flow in this particular trend over past 5 years, I can see the change, and I can analyze that, you know, if in the last year there's a change, then what is the reason of this change, why this change has occurred. I can easily ask the management or analyze myself that why capacity utilization has decreased. If it has decreased, if it has increased, I have no problems, I am all good. But if it has decreased, then I need to know why is that it has decreased. Has the management taken deliberate steps, or has the management taken deliberate steps to decrease this capacity utilization? What answer does management have to justify the decrease in capacity utilization, if any? That is what I need to ask the management. Similarly for all the products, so product B also will have a similar trend. I will analyze this trend to see what kind of differences are there in the capacity utilization. Similar trend will be observed in product C, D, E also. I just need to analyze this table, and I'm done with this particular step. Capacity utilization for past 5 years must be analyzed. Then last a step in this particular series, but yes, not last for you, because if you are willing to take certain additional steps, certain additional activities to verify the closing inventory, then you can do so at your comfort. Reasons for abnormal capacity utilization must be found at, and corrective actions must be taken. So reasons for abnormal capacity utilization must be found out, and corrective actions must be taken. So the analysis which I've just done in this particular case AB, in product A, I've analyzed that there has been an abnormal decrease in my capacity utilization in the last 2 years. There has been an abnormal decrease. So in this year also and in this year also there has been an abnormal decrease. I need to know the reason for the decrease in capacity utilization. A, I need to know the reason. B, I need to see what actions have been taken by the management to rectify this under capacity utilization. I need to see that. I first of all need the reasons from management. Management should tell me why is there a decrease in capacity utilization. Why is there a decrease? Management should first tell me this. Then the second question which management needs to answer is what corrective actions have been taken by the management to rectify this underutilization of capacity for the last 2 years. What corrective actions have been taken by the management? Because it's very, very important that after this analysis takes place. So if I were to make an arrow, because last two steps are connected, so this step will ultimately lead to this step. This step will lead to this step. So both of the last 2 steps are actually congruent to each other. So both will result into a congruency. So this step will lead to this step. All right, sir. So yes, these are the 4 primary steps. Okay, 4 primary steps and basic level steps which will be there in every inventory audit. In every inventory audit program, you will at least bare minimum write these 4 steps. Okay, beyond that it's your will. You can take many other steps like control testing. What do you mean by control testing? I'll give an example of control testing to all of you. This is what you might do in certain cases. So I'll give you an example. All right. Okay, so that's your factory. And that is the entry gate of your factory. Okay, over here there's a guard who's sitting and he monitors all the goods which are coming in and all the goods which are going out. He monitors everything over here. So raw material enters your factory. When raw material enters your factory, then the guard has got a register in which he notes down what are the raw material which has entered into your factory. That raw material moves from the gate to the quality control department. There is a recording which happens in quality control department that this much goods have been received for quality control. Then after quality control is done, these goods are moved to the warehouse. Again, at the gate of the warehouse, there is a recording of how many goods have come in the warehouse. Then from the warehouse, these goods move to the production line, PL, production line. And from the production line, there is a warehouse again of finished goods. This was the warehouse of raw material. Again, warehouse of finished goods is there. So in that warehouse also, the finished goods would have come. Then from here, the finished goods would have again moved out using this particular gate. Finished goods moved out of this particular gate again. Again, there will be a register which will note down how many finished goods have moved out of this particular door, right? So this is the entire cycle which is there in case of finished goods and inventory. Now what do you mean by control testing? What do you mean by checking whether controls were effective or not? Now we'll study, guys, in case of finished goods. I'm only focusing on finished goods right now. In case of finished goods, we'll actually study that the finished goods which have been received in warehouse, whether they have been quality checked or not. QC has been done on them properly or not. So we'll be studying from the QC department whether the finished goods have been quality control checked or not. All of them should be quality control checked so that inferior quality goods are not sent to the customers. Okay, so that control testing should happen, that yes, controls are strong, that quality control happens for all the goods which are in the warehouse. Then we need to see whether the finished goods which are going out, are they properly recorded? Or is it that 100 goods are moving out of the factory? Out of 100, 10 units are kept by the guard for his home or personal consumption, or he sells them off, and only 90 moves out of the factory, and a guard tells that all 100 have moved out of the factory. If guard will lie, then the transport person will not lie, guys. So guard would hand over the finished goods to some transport person who will be a truck driver. Okay. And that transport person will not lie. So if we match the outward register with the transporter's receipt, transporter would have given a certain receipt that yes, I have taken 100 goods from the gate and I'm supplying it to the customers. So that transporter receipt, if we match the transporter receipt with this register, then we will come to know how many goods has guard written in the register and how many goods has he actually supplied to the transporter. This is how we join the dots. We join step by step, we join the dots, and this is how we unearth or we find out what is the fraud which is going on in the company. This is the control testing. So in this entire process, we need to check many things. Similarly for raw material, like we have done it for finished goods. Now I'll tell you about raw material. Raw material is, whenever it is introduced, it is written over here in the register. So now transporter would have given a receipt of the raw material which he has delivered in the factory. So that receipt is going to be tallied with this particular register which guard is making entry in, because we don't want guard to keep 10 units of raw material for himself and sell it off. Okay, we don't want that. So this receipt will be tallied with the register which is there with the guard, where he's writing all the details about the raw material which have been received. Then we'll tally this register with this register called QC register. We'll be tallying this with warehouse raw material details of the warehouse raw material which has been received in the warehouse. Then production line bin. Production line would have a bin card. You must have studied about bin card in your costing. We'll be reconciling the bin card with this document. So this is how we are going to make a chain, and we are going to end-to-end audit the raw material and finished goods in absolute great detail. And the details which are written over here, the steps which are written over here, these are basic preliminary steps. Over and above these steps, you can take as many steps as you want, as you think fit from a auditor standpoint, whatever you think is best in case of company's scenario, in case of company situation, you can take those steps. So yes, this was the audit of finished goods. Finished goods are to be audited in this manner. 4 essential steps which are required to be taken by the auditor to carry on the audit of finished goods. Now let's move on, and I have already discussed a little bit in brief about this particular head. This is audit of raw material. Audit of raw material. So similar to finished goods, as we have discussed in finished goods as well, similar to finished goods, raw material also appears in two ways. One is P&L account and second one is balance sheet. Okay, so in P&L account, the closing raw material is increasing the profits of a particular company, and the opening raw material is decreasing the profits of a particular company. So profit and loss has a grave impact from the inventory, from the raw materials. Profit and loss has increased or decreased to a great extent because of the inventory. So yes, raw material has an impact on profit and loss account, as well as raw material also has an impact on balance sheet. Why? Because on the asset side of the balance sheet, raw material is appearing, and that asset side of the balance sheet is increased or decreased if raw material value is increased or decreased. So again, a very, very critical account head which impacts both profit and loss account as well as the balance sheet. So let's see. Again, same disclaimer I'm giving over here, guys. Same disclaimer. These are the basic steps. The basic steps which any person who's conducting audit of raw material will be undertaking. Over and above these steps, there can be several other steps which you can take. So this is a basic cost audit program which we are dealing with. It is not exhaustive. It is just illustrative. Okay, so let's start. The very first thing in raw material is inventory balancing. Same ditto same as we've done in our finished goods inventory, guys. Inventory balancing is the first step of auditing raw material. Opening stock plus purchases minus consumption is equal to the closing stock. The only point of difference between the earlier balancing and this balancing is that over here we have written purchases. However, in case of finished goods, we always write production, or the goods which are produced, right? So in case of finished goods, the equation was opening stock plus production is equal to closing stock minus closing stock plus consumption. So I've just written consumption within this side, so it has become as negative. If I write it over here, it will become positive plus consumption. So that means one and the same thing, doesn't matter at all. So inventory balancing in case of raw material is opening stock plus purchases during the year. How much raw material is purchased by you during the year, minus consumption. Whatever consumption you've done, whatever raw material you've put in your production line, that I'll reduce, should be equal to closing stock. This is a average, balancing equation which we have to analyze while we are doing inventory of raw material. And again, guys, this closing stock should tally to the physical verification of inventory. So I'll do a physical verification of inventory. In that physical verification of inventory, this figure which I have written over here, this particular figure, closing stock, this closing stock should tie with physical verification of inventory. So whatever is the closing stock as per this equation, that should be equal to the physical verification of raw material which I undertake. Should be absolutely the same. Just like we've done in our finished goods, that we'll physically visit the warehouse and see how many finished goods are there. Similarly, we'll physically visit the warehouse and see how many units of raw material is there as the closing stock on 31st March of the financial year. And then we are going to tally it with the equation which comes in our books of accounts. So books of accounts, we make a calculation in the books of accounts. There we will get a figure of closing stock. Then we will compare it with the physical inventory, and if there's any deviation, then we will look for that deviation. Because guys, it can so much happen that in the books the number of units of raw material is coming as 10. However, physically when we verified it, it came to 8 because 2 units of raw material was stolen by the warehouse manager. Warehouse manager had pulled out 2 units of raw material and had sold it outside. This might so happen. There is theft. There is internal theft done by employees. Sometimes even management are not aware about these thefts. This happens a lot. So closing stock which comes according to our books of accounts, it should tally with the physical verification which we do in our warehouse. So books of accounts will tell us, according to this equation, books of accounts will tell us that yes, you should have 10 units of raw material lying in your warehouse. When we actually visit the warehouse, then we are realizing that yes, the units are 10, or are they less. So very simple example, guys. A simple example is that during any festivals, the children used to get chocolates. Okay, children gets chocolates. So during any festival, so suppose we get 5 chocolates. Okay, and 5 chocolates are kept in the fridge. So my mom will instruct both me and my younger brother that these 5 chocolates should actually last for 10 days. Okay, so 2 days 1 chocolate, 2 days 1 chocolate. Okay, so after 4 days only 2 chocolates should have been finished. So ideally, according to mom's equation, 5 chocolates will last for 10 days. Okay, so after 4 days 2 chocolates should have been finished and 3 should be remaining in the fridge. However, when mom actually sees the fridge, open the fridge and sees the fridge, there only 1 chocolate is remaining. Then she will analyze the deviation. She will say, oh, 3 chocolates should have been there in the fridge because only 4 days have passed, but these naughty kids of mine have eaten more than the chocolates which should have been eaten. They have definitely done a wrong thing. Similarly, the inventory which is there as per the books of accounts, which should have been there in the warehouse as well, that must tie with the physical inventory which is there in the warehouse. If it doesn't tie, then there's a matter of concern. We will audit why is the physical inventory less than the inventory which is there, which should have been there according to books of accounts. We'll inquire about that, and after inquiring about that, we'll note down it in our audit observations, and we'll ask management also to look at the theft or look at the stealing which has happened in the warehouse. So that is the first step. So first step is very clear to all of us, right? Inventory balancing. Same step in finished goods, same in raw material. Both of them are absolutely the same, just that in finished good it was production. In finished goods it was production. In raw material it is purchases. In finished goods there was one more element over here, internal transfers. Over here there is no internal transfer because in case of raw material internal transfer doesn't happen usually. Alright, now same table as per the finished goods. So the table which is there in the finished goods section, I hope you remember that table. Yes, this is the table. So this is the table. Same table will be used for raw material as well. Same table. So you can copy this particular table from finished goods section to raw material section as well. Same table is to be used in that particular section as well. It's just that instead of product, I will write raw material A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on and so forth. This is how we are going to prepare the table for raw material. Same table prepared for raw material as well. Okay, sir. Next, second is normal loss should be shown in the consumption. Now this is a very important step, guys, and in our material cost accounting standard we have studied this particular aspect in great detail, that whatever is the normal loss, it is loaded in rest of the products. It is not to be separately disclosed in the profit and loss account. You remember that? In CAS 1 also we have studied it, abnormal cost, what is the treatment of abnormal cost and normal cost, right? And raw material cost accounting standard also we have studied that the normal loss which is there, it is to be absorbed in consumption. It is to be loaded on the other products. So normal loss is not to be separately disclosed. It is to be absorbed in the consumption and it has to be absorbed in the other units. So normal loss should be shown in consumption. Normal loss is nothing but consumption. It is not a separate item of expense. Next, and a very, very important one, input-output ratio. For past 5 years are to be analyzed. Any significant increase may be looked at. Now, this is a very, very important thing, guys. Input-output ratio means how much input is required to prepare 1 unit of final output. So, suppose input is required as 2 to get 1 unit of final output. So, the input-output ratio is 2:1. Suppose the input required is 1.5. and the final output is 1. So the input output ratio is 1.5:1. This is how input output ratio is there. Now, if there is an increase in input output ratio, which means 2 years back, we used to use 1.2 kgs of input to get 1 kg of output. But now we are using 1.7 kgs of input to get 1 kg of output. Let me repeat. 2 years back, we were consuming 1.2 kgs of input to get 1 unit of output. And now we are consuming 1.7 units of input to get 1 unit of output. Isn't this a drastic increase? Isn't this a sudden huge increase? So if you see such increase in last 5 years data, in last 5 years input output ratio, if you see such increase, then you must look at it. Again, you can make a table like this. You can make a table, and you know, even if there's no such specific format given, you can create a format of your own. So not to worry in that case. Okay, so if I make a table like that, okay, and what I need to do is I just need to capture all the input output ratios for past 5 years. Just need to capture the input output ratios. Okay, sir. So I made table for 4 years. This is the 5th year. Okay, so year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. What I want is input output ratio. So I'll put input output ratio of all the years over here, and I will then compare what is the increase or decrease in this input output ratio. I will make such a table and then I will compare. Okay, sir. So guys, this is how I'm going to compare the input output ratio. So the essential element is that I should not significantly deviate from the input output ratio which I have earned in the past years. I should not significantly deviate from those input output ratios. Yes, if last year it was 1.2, this year it has been 1.25 as compared to last year's 1.2. That's not a significant deviation. That's a minor deviation. So minor deviation can be ignored, but any significant deviation, any deviation which is more than the usual deviation, that must definitely be looked at. So any significant deviation must be looked at. So the input output ratio of all the 5 years are to be tabulated in this manner, and it can be analyzed. The trend can be analyzed to see where the input output ratio has increased invariably. Yes. The next step is sales value of residue of raw material must be subtracted from the consumption of respective finished goods. This is a very, very important point, guys. So guys, whenever a raw material is used to produce certain finished goods, there is some residuary which is remaining from that particular raw material. For example, if you make furniture out of wood, then there is some wood dust which remains after the furniture is made, after the furniture is given the final shape. Then there's some wood dust which remains. So by selling that wood dust, there is some sales value which is extracted, and that sales value must be subtracted from the consumption of the respective finished goods. So whichever finished good is the raw material is used in, whichever finished good, the remain of the raw material or the sales value of the residuary of the raw material should be reduced from the consumption of that particular finished good itself. Now, if one raw material is used in many finished goods, this was the situation where one raw material is used in one finished good. But if one raw material is used in making many finished goods, then guys, the residuary of that particular raw material, the sales value of it should be subtracted from all the finished goods in a proportionate manner. So I'll give you an example. Okay, there is some wood from which you are making several things. So you have wood plies, big wood plies which are there, planks actually, not plies, planks, wood planks which are there. Now first of all, you make a chair out of this wood plank. Okay, now my drawing skills are really bad, so please don't tell that this is not looking like a chair. Yes, it is a chair. This is a chair. Okay, then comes a table. This is a table which is made. Then there's a almirah which is made out of these wood planks, and then there's a door which is made out of these wood planks. Okay, so several things are made out of this wood plank. Now if I know that the wood plank is made to use only chair, then the residuary sales value of residuary of this particular wood raw material will be subtracted from the consumption of the chair. if I know and if I'm able to correlate one on one that yes, this wood plank has been used to make this chair, then I will reduce the residuary of this raw material wood from the consumption of this particular chair. But if I'm using all these wood planks in making all of these, then I'm not aware that I cannot correlate the wood planks with my finished goods. Then what should I do? I should then, whatever is the sales value of the residuary, whatever is the sales value, I should reduce from each of the finished goods in a proportionate manner. That is the principle. So the primary principle is that, what is the primary principle? Primary principle is that the sales value of residuary of raw material must be subtracted from the consumption of the respective finished goods. The sales value of the residuary of the raw material must be subtracted from the consumption of the finished good. This is the primary principle. But what is the secondary principle? That if same raw material is used in making multiple finished goods, then in a proportionate manner the sales value must be subtracted. That is the secondary rule. Alright, next principle. When R&D department, research and development department, has carried out some process improvement, its effect on raw material consumption must be analyzed. Now this is a very important point, guys, and as an auditor I would generally miss out on this point. As an auditor I would not check this point, but it is a very, very important point. So suppose R&D department has carried on some process improvement, which means that the input output ratio of 2:1, which was there earlier, is now 1.5:1. The input output ratio, which was earlier 2:1, is now 1.5:1. That is the R&D department's process improvement which they have done during the current year. Now if they have done this kind of a process improvement in the current year, guys, then its effect on raw material consumption must be analyzed. You should be able to precisely demonstrate that in the current year input output ratio has underwent a decline. You should be able to demonstrate that. So what is the use of this process improvement if your input output ratio has not declined? So input output ratio should actually decline in the current year if there is any process improvement which R&D department has taken place, which R&D department has carried on. So as an auditor I need to be vigile that whatever expenditure R&D department is incurring in process improvement, that should actually convert into tangible, into measurable output. I should be able to see that yes, input output ratio has declined in the current year. Over here the input output ratio is 2:1. Over here it should be 1:5:1. I should be able to see it. If I'm not able to see it, then there's some problem in R&D department's expenditure which R&D department is carrying on the process improvement of raw material. So yes, any kind of R&D improvement should be analyzed very, very carefully. Next, FIFO or weighted average must be used to charge the raw material to consumption. FIFO or weighted average must be used to charge the raw material to consumption. Now I need to explain this particular point using a diagram, using a example. Okay, let us see one example. Okay. So guys, that's my warehouse. Okay, this is my warehouse. This is entry gate of my factory. This is my warehouse, and this is the production department. This is the production department. Now on 1st of January some goods entered into my premises. Those goods had 20 kgs of raw material which was purchased at rupees 10 each. I repeat, on 1st of January I had bought certain raw material which costed me rupees 10 per kg, and I had bought 20 kgs of raw material. So on 1st January I had purchased some raw material. Now on say 15th of January I purchased another set of raw material which was introduced inside my factory gate, and over there I had purchased 30 kgs of raw material at the rate of rupees 11 each. Then guys, on 20th January, I again purchased 50 kgs of raw material at the rate of rupees 13 each. So my warehouse has 3 categories of raw material. My warehouse has 3 categories of raw material. First one is purchased at the rate of rupees 10 each, second one is purchased at the rupees of 10 each, 11 each, and third one is purchased at the rate of rupees 13 each. I have 3 categories of raw material lying in my warehouse. Now, on 1st of February, I transferred certain goods from warehouse to production department. How much quantity? Say, 15 kgs of goods were transferred, or say 35 kgs of goods were transferred from warehouse to production department. Goods were transferred from warehouse to production department. Now, the big question is, I have 3 categories of inventory saved in my warehouse, stored in my warehouse. All 3 of them are absolutely the same in terms of their characteristics, in terms of their name, in terms of their feature, in terms of their brand. Everything is same. It's just that the prices at which I had purchased them is different, because prices are dependent on market prices. So as you must have seen, when you go and buy vegetables price is changing every day. So potato, which is say 80 rupees for 5 kgs today, it was 100 rupees yesterday, and tomorrow it might be 60 rupees per 5 kg. So every day raw material prices are changing for especially the groceries, vegetables, cereals, pulses, etc., etc. All these prices are varying every day. So the raw material is the same in terms of characteristics, features, their looks, brands, etc. But in terms of price, there is a variation in all 3 kind of raw material. Now 35 kgs I've transferred from warehouse to production department. Now the big question is, what is the rate which I should choose? What is the rate which I should choose out of these 3 to charge to my production cost? Production cost. Which rate should I choose? Should I choose 10? Should I choose 11? Should I choose 12? Now obviously guys, if I choose 13, which is the highest one, production cost will be the highest. If I choose 10, then production cost will be the lowest. That is the variation which will be there. So if I choose 10, then production cost will be the lowest. If I choose 13, production cost will be the highest. That is the difference which it will have on the choice of method which I use. So according to this, I have 2 methods which are prescribed by the cost accounting systems, which are FIFO, first in first out, which means whatever product I have purchased first. So 10 rupees product I have purchased first, 20 kgs are there for 10. So 10 rupees is the first price that I should intake. So 20 into 10 I should intake. Then the remaining 15 kgs should be for 11 rupees. This is the FIFO method, okay, and we have done it in our inter as well as final in our costing syllabus, okay. This is the FIFO method. Next method is the weighted average method. Weighted average method would say that, you take an average of these numbers and then you charge to the production cost center, because in a practical life, in a practical scenario, all these products are mixed, intermingled with each other, and no one can identify which product was bought at what rate. Everything is intermingled, okay, and production manager is not concerned about the price. He's just concerned about the product reaching the production line. So weighted average is the method which is the second prescribed method, which is used to charge the raw material to the production cost. Yes, there is one more method, which is the LIFO method. But guys, LIFO method is not prescribed by the accounting standards. Accounting standards say that LIFO method is not to be used while while charging the raw material to production cost. FIFO method is not to be used. It is denied as per the accounting standards as well as cost accounting standards. Both of them deny using FIFO. So LIFO is out of the question. The 2 options are FIFO and weighted average. And let me tell you, out of my experience, 90% of the industries are currently using weighted average method. They do not use FIFO, they use weighted average method, because weighted average method is the most scientific and most balanced method. It is a balanced method. It balances highs and lows of the raw material cost. So it is a very, very balanced method. So yes, the next step is also telling you to use the FIFO method or weighted average method must be used to charge the raw material to consumption. So if you want to charge the raw material to consumption, you can use either of the two methods. Either it should be FIFO or it can be weighted average. Either of the two methods can be used for charging the raw material to consumption. It's up to your will. Now, just for your information, not relevant from an exam perspective, guys. It is not actually relevant from an exam standpoint. There is another method which is known as the specific identification method. There's another method known as specific identification method. This method is these days very popular. Why? Because I'll tell you the simple reason why this method is popular, guys. So in this particular scenario, we have barcoding methods. We have barcodes on all the products. Since we have barcodes on all the products, we will clearly identify that if which priced good is being transferred from warehouse to the production line. We'll clearly identify it. So using the specific identification method, we will track the barcode of the good which we are actually moving to the production line, and we can actually, on a real-time basis, we can use the actual amount which is debited to the cost. So this is how specific identification method works, and specific identification method is used in several industries, because now barcodes are very, very important. Barcodes are very, very popular, and these barcodes are widely used to track inventory status. So using the barcodes, this method is also possible now. The name of the method is specific identification method. But yes, from a exam standpoint, you need not write this. You should actually not write this. You should not think about this method, because this is not relevant from an exam standpoint. From an exam standpoint, only two methods are specified, which are the FIFO method and the weighted average method. That's it. There's no other method from an exam standpoint. Okay, sir. So exam standpoint and practical life standpoint are sometimes different. Yes, guys, exam standpoint is sometimes different from a practical life standpoint. Okay. Next, use of imported plus local raw material, self-manufactured plus purchased raw material. So of course, guys, raw material can be either of imported type or local raw material. You have imported the raw material from outside. That can be one category of raw material. Secondly, self-manufactured raw material which you have manufactured at your home, and the one which you have purchased from outside. These are the two categories of raw material which can be used by you in the organization. So we can use these two categories of raw material. First is imported and local raw material. Second is self-imported, self-manufactured and purchased raw material. Now this is a very, very important element, guys. Whenever there is a use of two kinds of material, two kinds of raw material are being used. First is imported and second is local raw material. Then what happens is the quality of that raw material, both the raw material, do not vary substantially. But due to unavailability of local raw material, we have to mandatorily purchase it from outside. Generally, those people who are using both imported and local raw material, the quality might not differ substantially, but the availability differs substantially, and that is why the goods are imported from outside. In such a situation, imported raw material will be a little expensive and local raw material will be a little cheap. The imported raw material will be a little expensive and local will be a little cheap. So whenever you are charging the cost of local and imported raw material to any product, whenever you are charging the cost, then you should charge the cost equally. Equally means 50% of imported and 50% of local raw material should be charged to the product. It should be proportionately charged so that there is no distortion of cost of that particular product. There should not be any distortion, because both of the raw materials are equally good. Now suppose if in any product I charge only the imported raw material, then its production cost will increase invariably. It will increase to a very high extent, which will create a bad impact on that particular product's production cost. So to avoid distortion of cost, both the cost, imported raw material and local raw material, both the cost should be charged proportionately, which means equally, to the product which is being produced. Both of them should be charged proportionately. Right? Similarly, self-manufactured raw material is there and purchased raw material is there. Their cost should also be charged equally in both the in the product. Both of them should be proportionately charged in the product. You should not so do that, you should charge self-manufactured raw material entirely in one of the products, and you should charge the cost of purchased raw material in another product. You should not do that. You should charge both the cost equally while computing the production cost of a particular product. You should charge both of them equally. So production cost should be a mixture of self-manufactured and purchased, or a mixture of imported and local in an equal proportion, in a equal proportionate manner. So yes, in case of raw material, use of raw material, imported and local raw material, both should be equally charged to the production cost centers. Yes, the cost will vary substantially. Imported will be very highly priced, local will be relatively lower in value. That this will be there, this is bound to happen, but while charging this particular cost in the production cost center, you should charge them proportionately, you should charge them equally. If you don't charge them equally, then what will happen? The product cost of a particular product will invariably increase, and product cost of another product will invariably decrease. So you should charge them equally. Okay, next, ensure that all raw material supplied by the supplier is recorded in the books through transit receipts. So guys, we had already discussed this particular aspect in one of our diagrams, and I'll get back to that particular diagram. I'll tell you where we had discussed this particular point. Okay, this is the point where we had discussed that particular part, that whatever is the transit receipt of the transporter, whatever is the transit receipt of the transporter, you should tally it with the gate inward register. So whatever supplier has supplied to us, the raw material which has been supplied inside the factory, it will be evident from the transit receipt. So this transit receipt should be tied up, should be tallied with the register which is there at the gatekeeper, at the guard, and this should also be tied with the quality control inward register, to know that entire raw material which has been supplied by the supplier is correctly recorded in the books of accounts. There is no raw material which has not been recorded in the books of account. Entire raw material has been perfectly recorded in the books of accounts. So a simple check is, you should tally the receipts, transit receipt of the entire year. You should total all the transit receipts of a particular year, and you should tally it with the register, the gate inward register. That is the simple check. So let me get back. Okay, we were here. Ensure that all raw material supplied by the supplier is recorded in the books of accounts. The costing books, entire raw material should be recorded. And what is the checking point? Checking point is the transit receipt. You should check the recording from the transit receipt. Transit receipt should have the same recording as what has been done in the cost records. So both should tally, and that is how we will check the completeness of raw material which has been recorded. Okay, sir. Next, overuse of raw material should be carefully monitored. If there is any overuse of raw material which will be evident from kind of this kind of a chart, the input output ratio chart trend of last 5 years, this kind of chart will show you that overuse of input is there in a particular year, overuse of a particular raw material is there in a particular year. This chart will show you that particular aspect. If there is any overuse of raw material, that should be carefully monitored. So you can easily monitor it using this particular chart. Trend analysis can be done. Then last, trend of raw material consumption must be analyzed. So whatever raw material has been consumed during the period, that should be correctly analyzed. And again, overuse is to be identified. Overuse is to be curtailed. The overusage is to be stopped. So what kind of table do we make in this particular scenario? We have two raw materials. We have raw material 1, raw material 2. Average monthly consumption of the current year and the previous year are to be written over here, and we'll be able to analyze the difference between these two. Then closing stock of current year and previous year will be available over here, and we'll be able to analyze what is the difference between current year's closing stock and previous year's closing stock, and that is how we are going to analyze the trend of raw material consumption. So trend of raw material consumption is to be analyzed, and average monthly consumption will give us the figures of whatever is being consumed. Raw material 1 and 2 figures will be over here, and we'll be able to analyze the average monthly consumption of raw material. Raw material 1 and raw material 2 are the two relevant raw materials. Yes, so trend gives us useful insights on the raw material expense, and trend can be one of the major factors in every analysis, in every cost, in every part of our cost audit program. Trend analysis will always form an essential element. So please have this as a constant in all the cost audit programs, that trend analysis will always be done. This will always be done. There's no way where trend analysis will not be done. Trend analysis will always be done. In all the situations, trend analysis will be done. So take it as a given that trend analysis will be done to analyze the trends which are there, to analyze the increases and decreases which are there. So this will be a easy way to find out whether everything is going fine or not, or whether there is something which is fishy, something which is not usual, something which is unusual. If you want to find that out, trend analysis can be a important measure. So yes, this was a very important subject matter of audit, which is raw materials, but yes, contains only some major checks and balances are there, but some major ones are there. Of course, according to your industry, according to your expertise, according to your knowledge, according to your prior experience, you can add on to the steps which can be done while testing or while checking the raw material cost. Okay, sir, we got it.